Hello and happy Saturday. This is week 9 of Play Calling with Keenan, brought to you by Incede.ai. We got a lot of good matchups this week. Let's get into it. Taking a look back at the week 8 recap, a lot of good games on, but most importantly, before this week started, we had the very important day on Tuesday, the NFL trade deadline. Not much things of substance came to form on Tuesday. Carlos Dunlap did get traded for the Bengals. The Ravens got a little deeper defensive end. Other than that, not really notable fantasy football offensive players were traded. It was a really quiet day. A lot of cap uncertainty going forward with how the league will handle the coronavirus affected cap will really kind of dictate a lot of teams' decisions to stand put as opposed to go out and make moves. This week, Antonio Brown did practice. He'll be back with the Buccaneers. In what capacity remains yet to be seen. But Tom Brady's going to have a lot of good receivers with Chris Godwin goes. Once again, Russell Wilson played awesome, cemented himself in the lead so far for the MVP race. His 26 touchdowns are on par with Peyton Manning's record-breaking year. So we'll have to keep an eye on that if he can remain his current pace. Dalvin Cook, monster game this last week, crossed over 40 for fantasy point owners. He played great. Devontae Adams on Thursday absolutely cooked the Niners. He's WR1 this year. He's killing it. He seems to get better every game. His last 10-game slash, I think the lowest amount of points he scored in full-point PPR is 12. So he's killing it. Travis Kelce continues to be the tight end 1 in the year. The Steelers really came through in a giant game versus the Ravens. They came through in a last-second stop, went on the road, and cemented themselves as possibly the top challenger of the Chiefs in the AFC and among a top 3 team in the NFL this year. That was week 8. Let's get into week 9. Getting into injuries this week, we first start with Phillip Lindsay. I have to share this headline as this is really impressive. He's become the first running back in NFL history to go for his first 450 carries in the NFL without fumbling. He's Mr. Reliable, averaging 6.92 yards per carry. He's electric when he gets the ball. Although he's only played in 3 games, he is once again questionable this Friday with a foot injury. If he is active, he's definitely worth a look at flex. Melvin Gordon, who got a $15 million deal over the course of the offseason, continues to get the lion's share of carries there. But I think Denver's making a mistake because Phillip Lindsay has been Mr. Reliable and Mr. Electric when he's touching the ball. Same game going to receivers. We look at Calvin Ridley, who missed Friday's practice and is questionable for Sunday's game. Calvin Ridley's been good this year. Russell Gage continues to be a good play if he is, in fact, going to miss time. Julio Jones is once again healthy. The Falcons have been productive at wide receiver, and Russell Gage is your move if Calvin Ridley, in fact, misses time. Looking to the Ravens, Mark Ingram is doubtful and is not expected to play after missing practice on Friday. J.K. Dobbins and Gus Edwards remain the backup play there. Christian McCaffrey is back this week, which brings me up to a stat I want to share with you guys. Looking at draft position this year, we take a look at the percent chance in first place by your draft position in 12-man leagues. We see that Christian McCaffrey went first in most leagues. Only 2% of people have been winning with the first pick last year. We look, the highest odds of winning have typically been in the 4 through 7 range. So this is just something that was kind of an interesting stat to share with everyone. So Christian McCaffrey owners, you've been waiting for production, your guy. We know that also Saquon Barkley has missed some time, but this is kind of indicative of injuries. You look at this stats like this, missing time out of the number 1 spot is going to cost you. But Christian McCaffrey, fantasy owners rejoice. He's back. Joe Mixon this week is out. Giovanni Bernard continues to be a good play there. Zeke Elliott is questionable for the Cowboys. Tony Pollard remains the handcuff if he does, in fact, miss time. Kenny Galladay is out for the Lions. Lions also may be out without Matthew Stafford this week, who is on the COVID list. Remains to be seen if he plays. Chase Daniel will be the backup quarterback if he does miss any time. Going to the Raiders, Josh Jacobs is questionable with both a knee injury and an illness, though he is expected to play. Looking to the Dolphins, they've been hit by injuries at running back. Myles Gaskin and backup Matt Breida are out. Jordan Howard, who has been a healthy scratch the last few games, expected to get time if he's in fact active. Michael Thomas, he's back. Michael Thomas is finally back. Ironically enough, be the same team he played when he got injured. He went down week 1 versus the Bucs, comes back week 9 versus the Bucs. Michael Thomas is back. To the Giants, Devontae Freeman is once again out. To my Seattle Seahawks, Chris Carson and Carlos Hyde are out. Your backup play will be once again DJ Dallas and Travis Homer. Dallas came through as my flex of the week last week, and he came up with a nice 2-touchdown performance. He once again remains a reliable play. And that does it for the injuries this week. Getting into quarterbacks, we're first going to start with the quarterback who I love this week that's not getting enough praise. It's Matt Ryan. He's leading the league in passing, but isn't a QB1 in all leagues. He's definitely a QB1 in this matchup versus Denver this week. Denver is giving up at least 18 fantasy points, or has given up at least 18 fantasy points to 6 of their 8 opponents so far this year. Matt Ryan, after a middle of the stretch that wasn't so strong, after coming out strong, has recertified himself as a solid quarterback. Come off a 281-yard, 1-touchdown performance. Previous 2 contests, he threw for over 325 yards. He's really starting to heat up. Julio Jones is back healthy, which is a big indicator of success. The Broncos are the middling as far as pass yards goes, give up 16th in the league in pass yards allowed. I think this is a good matchup in a week where the Falcons are going to have to pass, as the Broncos do have a very stout run defense. This is going to be a great matchup for Matt Ryan versus the Broncos. Quarterback I don't like as much is Hall of Famer, soon-to-be Hall of Famer, Drew Brees. Conventional wisdom would think that Drew Brees might have a bigger game upon getting Michael Thomas back. I tend to disagree. The Bucs have a lethal pass rush and a solid defense all in all, although their defense did take a little bit of a drop after surprisingly not playing that well versus Daniel Jones. I think they're going to have a nice rebound week. They'll get a good pass rush on Drew Brees. Drew Brees' arm strength has been a topic of conversation all year long. I don't think it's suddenly going to improve overnight. Tampa Bay has the pass rush and the secondary to give him a lot of problems. In their first game, although it was a win for the Saints, he was held to 160 yards and 2 touchdowns and didn't have to do a whole lot as the Bucs made some mistakes early and got off slow. I think this game, the Bucs will be really prepared for a really big-time division rivalry game. They're going to have to pass more, not as predictable or much more predictable in this game. I don't think they're going to have a lot of flexibility in their play calling. And I'm typically going to go on the bust side. I'm going bust, lower projections for Drew Brees. He's boomed only once, busted 0 times, been a really safety, game-engine quarterback. I think he's going to give you exposed versus a very tough Buccaneers defense. Taking a look at running backs, we will first start with someone who's been a backup this year, but slugging the starter role, Chase Edmonds. I love Chase Edmonds this week. He's boomed 4 out of 7 weeks in a backup role, finally getting the reins as a starter with the injury to Kenyon Drake. I believe he's going to have a huge game. He's projected 17.4 full point PPR. I think he's going to exceed that. He's playing a Dolphins defense is mediocre at best. And they have a strong pass defense. They struggled stopping the run. Taking a look at game logs so far this year for Chase Edmonds, he had, just off limited opportunities, he scored 20 points twice. He's had 2 other solid weeks. He catches the ball really well, come off his 7 catches for 87-yard performance versus the Hawks. Runs the ball well, extremely electric when he gets it. I love Chase Edmonds this week. I believe that him and Kyler Murray's combination of run game, stretching the perimeter of that defense is really going to rack up for a lot of points. Not only do I like him this week, I think Chase Edmonds is a top 5 running back coming from a backup to a starter. He's a must-start RB1. If he's still somehow on waiver wires, pick him up there. I love the boom on him this week. Running backs I sit is actually be a tandem running backs from the same team. I am not a fan of either Ronald Jones or Leonard Fournette this week. Listen, the thing to say about this game is Tom Brady has his weapons back at full disposal. For the first time, he will have Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Gronkowski, and he will debut Antonio Brown in a passing offense that no one can stop. The Saints have a middling pass defense at best. They do have the 3rd best run defense, which inclines me to think that the Buccaneers are going to pass the ball a lot. I don't expect them to use Ronald Jones, who's coming off some fumble issues, hasn't played well, really had a bust game last week. As far as games have gone, he had a 3-game stretch from week 4 to week 6 where he ran for over 100 yards, really played well. Leonard Fournette came back, cannibalized his opportunities. He did get a garbage time touchdown versus the Raiders. He hasn't caught the ball much as Fournette has seen most of the action as a 3rd down back. I'm not a fan of Ronald Jones this week, nor, as previously mentioned, Fournette. Fournette has had increased opportunities since coming back. He's been the 3rd down back predominantly, and with Ronald Jones' fumble issue, he might even slide into the starting back for 3 downs with Ronald Jones spelling him. He's done a good job running the ball as far as yards per carry goes in his first 2 games being back. He's also caught 9 catches for over 60 yards as well on the receiving line. Scored 2 touchdowns in week 2, no receiving touchdowns yet. He hasn't paid off as much as the executives have thought in Tampa Bay, but he still is cannibalizing just enough of opportunity for Ronald Jones to really make both of them a low-end play. Avoid them if you can this week for your running backs. Taking a look at receivers this week, I absolutely love Scary Terry McLaurin. He has been an absolute world killer playing this year. He doesn't get enough credit because he's playing for the Washington football team in a garbage division. He's easily the best receiver in that division. Stats show it. Look at his lines this year. When he's been healthy, he has killed it versus good defenses, versus bad defenses. He has murdered the game. 10 catch, 118-yard performance versus a very good Baltimore secondary. Coming off another strong game versus Dallas, 7 for 90 and a touchdown. He's been electric on the field, booming 3 times, busting just once. I noticed IBM is pretty liking their projections on him. They're pretty coy both ways, 8% boom, 8% bust. I absolutely love him. He's playing the Giants, who are giving up nearly 24 points per game to wide receivers to line up on the furthest outside. It's a brutally awesome matchup. Must start in all leagues. He's getting slept on, I see, in a lot of current formats, not even rostered in 100% of leagues. He's an absolute absolute star. WR1 this week. I love Terry McLaurin, who I don't like is someone who has done fairly well this year, but kind of a new arrival to their offense will affect him. That is Mike Evans. Mike Evans has been a really touchdown-dependent wide receiver. As we've seen, the first 3 weeks, he came out of the gates scoring 4 total touchdowns. And the first 5 weeks, he scored a total of 6 touchdowns. He had 2 weeks between Green Bay and Las Vegas where he didn't really do anything. Had a decent week, come back last week. He's a guy that is an absolute red zone monster. Him and Brady haven't really developed the chemistry across the whole length of the field. And now this week, he's going to run into having Chris Godwin and now Antonio Brown as well as Gronk vulturing his targets. It's going to be really competitive to get catches in that backfield. The Saints' pass defense is pretty middling, not that great, but expected to have a pretty good secondary. They haven't performed as well as expected. I think that Brady's going to spread the ball around quite a bit. I'm actually leaning towards the bust on Mike Evans. He's busted 3 times, boomed twice. He's been a kind of a wild card player each week. Once again, really touchdown dependent. With Gronkowski being there, getting targets, Godwin finally back, and Antonio Brown. I'm not a huge fan of Mike Evans. I would even consider sitting him in leagues where you have depth and more options. And for my second straight week, I have a triple fade of the Cowboys wide receivers. People who drafted CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, like myself, have just been disappointed by the injuries to the Cowboys and overall poor performance. I don't think you can start Amari Cooper, CeeDee Lamb, or Michael Gallup in any leagues. The Cowboys have been atrocious. They're rolling out Garrett Gilbert at quarterback this week after the Ben DiNucci experiment was a failure. I just don't see any way they have any success versus the Steelers' defense. The Steelers probably have the best defense in the league. They have 3 players of over 6 sacks. I don't see any scenario where this goes well for the Cowboys. I think a better option would be for them to roll out Kellen Moore as the quarterback and offensive coordinator and just let him call plays from the huddle. They're absolutely helpless this week. I don't see them moving the ball whatsoever versus the Steelers. Triple fade all 3 of those receivers this week. Getting into my flex of the week, it is a former Oregon State Beaver like myself, Brandon Cooks. I love Brandon Cooks this week, partly because I think he's have some increased opportunity. He's finally starting to build some rapport with Deshaun Watson. Looking at his last few games, you can see that is evident. After he had a giant game versus Jacksonville, who he plays this week, 8 for 161 and a touchdown. Followed that with another good divisional game versus Tennessee for 9 for 68 and a score. And he also played fairly well versus Green Bay. Coming off a bye, he's going to play Jacksonville once again. Jacksonville can't stop anyone. They are just the 28th ranked pass defense in the league. Will Fuller was a subject of trade talks all week. He didn't get traded. There may be some animosity there. I'm leaning towards Deshaun Watson, throwing to the former Beaver like myself, Brandon Cooks. Also in that game will be Jake Luton, making his first career start, former Oregon State Beaver once again. Jake Luton taking over for Gardner Minshew, who's out this week. Just talking on this game real quick, I think Luton could really throw the ball. He's really accurate quarterback, tall, 6'6", long frame. Expect a lot of passing in that game. I expect a really good game, and I expect Cooks and Luton both have big performances. Getting into the wild card of the week, it is the wildest name I could possibly think of, Antonio Brown, because why not? Making his debut for the Buccaneers. I love Antonio Brown this week. I just talked about how I wasn't a huge fan of Mike Evans. That's partly because I've been smashing the over Antonio Brown having a huge week this week. I mean, there's no stats I can show you for boom or bust. Here's what we can tell you. Last year, playing on the Patriots, he had 1 game. He played 24 snaps for the Patriots. Of those 24 snaps, he saw 8 targets, 33% usage rate, absolutely ridiculous for having less than a week of practice. He came away with 4 catches for 56 yards and 1 touchdown. Tom Brady is roommates with him in Tampa. Tom Brady has a lot of his success riding on his shoulders. You know that Bruce Arians didn't want him. Tom Brady did. Tom Brady is going to feed him the ball. He's going to force feed him, probably too much to Arians' liking. Antonio Brown has got to work because Tom Brady is the one who stuck his neck out in the line. I just think there's no way AB doesn't see a lot of targets in that short game in New England. I mean, 8 of 24 plays he ran, even less routes, you have some run plays. 8 targets is ridiculous. There's obviously built-in rapport and chemistry already with Brady and Brown. They've worked out in the offseason. There's just simply too much riding on him not to have success. I would start Antonio Brown over Evans, possibly even over Godwin. Time will tell. Maybe I'm being a little excited on his expectations this year, but I really think he will be a huge, huge, huge part of the offense for Tampa Bay. Wild card of the week. We have no stats, no idea how it will work. Antonio Brown, he's a character at best and at most, and I think he's going to do great with the Buccaneers and have a huge week this week versus the Saints. And in closing thoughts here, I'd like to share that Russell Wilson, our Hawks quarterback, captain of the 12s, has just filed a trademark for Let Russ Cook. It's been a phrase I've been saying all year on the show so far, and evidently he's been doing just that. He's been cooking. He's got 26 touchdown passes. Figured I'd throw that in there. Hashtag Let Russ Cook. Another thing I want to talk about here is what I've seen from IBM Watson the last few weeks on the ESPN app. At first, I was seeing a lot of really big boom or bust projections. You'd see anything from 5 to 24% either way. This week, I've noticed the app has really lowered their boom or bust projections. I think I've seen very low, between 4 to 14 points on most of the players I've done research on this week. So that's kind of an interesting development with the with IBM Watson. It's interesting to see what they're doing there. I'm not entirely sure the reasoning behind it, but that is something you should probably take a look at going forward. And as previously talked about, I think a great tool going forward for IBM Watson on ESPN and other interfaces is adopting a search criteria where you could go out and search players based off of their boom potential, bust potential, and matchup potential. I think that's a very good tool to add in there. Just some thoughts I want to throw in this week. Let me know what you think. That is a wrap of Week 9 Play Call with Keenan, sponsored by Incede.ai. Enjoy the games this week. Go Hawks.